What is up, everybody? Welcome into this breaking news edition of the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Of course, you can find the podcast at Pack a Day Podcast. Breaking news, Matt LaFleur is back with the Green Bay Packers, and he has signed or is going to be signing a long-term extension. Multiple reports, Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter, Rob Demovsky was sort of the big one that says that this is not a short-term prove-it sort of deal. From Rob, quote, Matt LaFleur will return as the Packers head coach per sources. He is signed to a multi-year contract extension that a source said is, quote, not a prove-it deal, but a real commitment. New deals for GM Brian Gutekunst and VP Russ Ball are also in the works. So I'm sure this is a polarizing topic for a variety of different people. That Matt LaFleur is back, that he's signing a long-term extension, that this is not some sort of short-term prove-it deal, that this is a legitimate long-term investment into Matt LaFleur, which means that he goes into this season really not on the hot seat at all. You're always on the hot seat as a head coach, to be fair, but it would take something, assuming that this is the contract I expect it to be, if it's a 4 or 5 year extension worth, probably 15 to 18 million per year, it would be very difficult to relieve Matt LaFleur of his duties after this year, unless, again, it was something catastrophic, lost the locker room, whatever, right? So Matt LaFleur looks like he is going to be the Packers coach for the foreseeable future. At least that's what they're hoping for when they sign him to this sort of extension. Remember, coaching contracts are guaranteed money. So this is not something where, well, we'll see in a year and then maybe he can get some incentives, or after this year, if we don't like it, then we'll move on. No, it's a guaranteed contract. So you can move on, but you're going to continue to pay Matt LaFleur during the time where he's gone and not coaching for your team. And that's ideally and obviously not what you want to do when you sign somebody to that sort of extension. So we'll try to get to all of your questions. Obviously, on the side of this is when this is done, we'll have to kind of keep an eye on Goody and Russ Ball. But those always felt like they would get done automatically. Like that'll happen with time. I didn't think either of those two were going anywhere, quite frankly. So the entire power structure will stay together. No word yet on if there's going to be a change in the power structure, if Matt's going to report to Goody or anything like that. The other thing, of course, on the side is that Jeff Hafley is a finalist for every position, basically. He's getting second interviews everywhere. And by all accounts, it seems like he's going to be the next head coach of the Miami Dolphins, which opens up a defensive coordinator spot. And we have to see now that Matt's, installed as the head coach, like there's no question he can now make changes if he wants to or needs to, special teams coordinator, offensive line coach, things like that. And you could also get coaches that are poached. We already know DeMarcus Covington has defensive coordinator opportunities elsewhere. I'm sure he's going to get one in Green Bay as well, but the Jets and the Cowboys are interviewing him. And if Jeff Hafley does get that job, I would assume Derek Ansley, DeMarcus Covington are on his short list of potential defensive coordinators in Miami as well. So there's a lot of moving parts. But again, breaking news, big news, Matt LaFleur is returning as the Packers head coach with a long-term extension, a multi-million-dollar or multi-year, multi-million-dollar deal that will keep him as the Packers head coach for, again, what is likely the foreseeable future. Get to some super chats really quick. Hopefully a lot of pressure on him, which I know it's not a prove-it deal. He needs to hire better assistants this year or we are cooked. Goes without saying that defensive coordinator position is going to be one of the biggest moves of the offseason. I would argue the biggest move of the offseason for Green Bay. They're not going to have a first-round pick. They're not going to have a huge free agent spending spree or anything like that. Like I said, maybe one $15-ish million a year contract if they really want to. But probably their biggest move of the entire offseason is going to be who they hire as their defensive coordinator, offensive line coach, special teams coordinator, things like that could be a huge part of it as well. We'll have to wait and see if Matt actually opens those positions or not. I'm okay with it, but I agree with Mike Daniels that this team needs an edge. I think everybody knows that this is not something that can just stay status quo. And I would assume that, Matt LaFleur had to prove to the powers that be that there are going to be some changes. If you're looking for a positive spin, I would say go against the 2 games against Detroit, especially that first game. There was an edge to that team. There was at times, especially with Micah and Tucker Kraft in the lineup, there were times where you could see them play with energy, intensity, physicality, and a real edge to them. I think really the first 2 games of the season, Detroit and Washington, were great examples of that. I wish it would have stayed the rest of the season. It didn't. And in some big games, it did not. But there were signs of it. But that's going to have to be more consistent. And they're going to have to be a team that plays with that level of intensity and demeanor if they want to get to where they want to go to. And that the onus is going to be on Matt for that. And I know the skeptics are already going to say, he's coached 7 years. Why would I believe that it's something that's going to happen now? And it's a fair comment to make. Again, that's where Matt's going to have to prove and say, hey, we're going to be able to do things a little bit better, a little bit different, and play with that intensity and physicality. It starts in the trenches. We talked about it for a while. The trenches weren't good enough. That's a Goody thing, by the way, too, and a Matt thing. You have to assemble the right talent. The individual coaches have to coach better. The players have to play better. And Matt's got to get this team playing with an edge as well. So all of that will definitely go into the calculus of what we will see, hopefully, as a better team in 2026. Xavier wants Flores as defensive coordinator ASAP. I think probably every team does, quite frankly, Xavier. He is not under contract in Minnesota, so he is free to sign elsewhere. I think the first thing that Brian Flores has to figure out is, does he get a head coaching job? There were rumors of the Raiders. He's getting other head coaching opportunities as well. Pittsburgh could make some sense. So if he gets a head coaching job, that's out of the question. And then, of course, if he doesn't, he's already interviewed with Washington for their defensive coordinator position. Minnesota wants him back, but that's probably a highest bidder sort of thing. The one thing you do have to think about, too, with somebody like Brian Flores is, if you do hire him, are you getting him for only a year, right? Is he a head coach soon? And that would be something that you'd have to take into consideration there, too. But I'd still, even if it's just a year, sign me up if you could somehow find a way to get him from Minnesota. Coach deserves another shot with the young team. Again, I have a feeling this is going to be a very polarizing topic, one way or the other. I'm sure some are very happy. I'm sure some are fine. And I'm sure some are very upset. I think in general, the best thing to do is, if you're upset with it, turn the page, try to figure out, all right, how can this team continue to get better? Hope that this coaching staff makes the most of it and see where things are at. I know, again, there's going to be people that are upset no matter what. And as soon as they lose a game next year, it's going to be, here we go again, and things like that. I think this team sets up well for 2026. I really do. I think this team, if fully healthy, is as good as any team in the league. But listen, I know that this is not a prove it sort of deal for Matt. I still feel like, even if not internally, externally, the pressure is going to be high on Matt to make sure that this team goes out and performs at an extremely high level in this next season. Beast, good to see you, my friend. Honestly, think it's the best choice given the options. Changes definitely have to happen, but Matt would have been the best coach available if he was fired. Again, as we talked about, I don't think there was ever any chance he was getting fired. If he would have been let go, they would have kept him under contract, so he could have went elsewhere, and you could have, regained compensation, draft picks, etc. for him. But I talked about that as well, and we talked about it at length. I gave a laundry list of reasons why I thought it would have been okay if they moved on. And I gave a laundry list of reasons why I think it would have been safe to say you could keep him. And I think him being the best coach on the market. And the big thing for me, the two big things for me, was the locker room really going to bat for Matt. It was over the top, so that they really wanted him back. Like, even Micah saying, like, hey, you're one of the key reasons that I'm here. That's I can't even begin to tell you. If you're Ed Policy, right? You don't want to have to make a big decision like that, kind of, unless you have to. And when your star player, I mean, Jordan gave him obviously a ringing endorsement, but when Micah as well goes out of his way to say, hey, like, this guy's the reason that I wanted to come here, like that, I can't tell you how huge that is and what that means to Matt. And also, even when you hear Aaron Rodgers say, like, who's not even in the organization, who didn't seem, always to be 1,000,000% on the same page as Matt, I'll just put it that way. For him to go out of his way and say, yeah, any getting rid of Matt would be absurd. And I think there is a large reason there where you, again, say, all right, well, let's, there's probably a reason for that. And the other thing I'll say too is just the offense together with Matt and Jordan Love is something that I trust a ton. It doesn't give a blank check for other mistakes that Matt makes, or, things that can't be better with the team elsewhere. But I still think that offense with Jordan and Matt working together, I think they can be as good as they want if they get that offensive line just built a little bit better. To me, the receivers, running backs, Jordan, you can put up 30 plus a game if you get good offensive line play, but they're going to have to figure out a way to do that. And again, play with consistency week in and week out. JRS, I do like that Ben Johnson doesn't get to kill LaFleur's Packers career revenge mindset, have that week one energy for 20 games next year. JRS, I would love nothing more than to see Matt LaFleur get his revenge next year on Ben Johnson on at least 2 different occasions, and to take it out on the Bears next year. And hopefully that's the case. And then, yes, I do think what they played like in that week 1 game against Detroit is something that they're going to have to make sure happens more consistently. And you don't have those games where you're crapping the bed and playing poor football against the Cleveland Browns and things like that. So that's something that Matt has got to get better at. We laid out the games where Green Bay's just come out flat, in all of his years as a coach. There's been 2 or 3 games, usually about 2 games per year. We're just like, this team looks nothing like they did in every other week. What is going on? And certainly the Cleveland Browns game was that this year. And the Ravens game too, quite frankly. I think Matt needs a culture guy. I think the fun Hackett brought as offensive coordinator is underrated. Gold zone and all of that doesn't have to be a tough guy. I think you want a little bit of all of it. I think you want some of those personalities in the locker room. I go back to, and on the field too. I go back to the Bucks when they won the championship last. Like, that team doesn't win the championship without PJ Tucker. And you just need some guys like that. I don't know that the Packers win in 2010 without Kevin Green. I don't think they win without Kevin Green. Just even the play, it is time. It is time. I don't think they win that game maybe without Kevin Green. So you need some guys like that. Yeah, Fritz Shermer was such an unbelievable fit for Mike Holmgren when, as his defensive coordinator. That was a huge play. So there's just, you have to get the right staff. You got to get the right players. It all has to come together at the right time. I think a lot of the players are there already. I think a lot of the staff is there already, but a couple tweaks here and there, I think, could go a really long way. Maybe different defensive coordinator, special teams coordinator, offensive line coach, some things like that. Maybe add some juice. By the way, losing one of those guys, Anthony Campanelli was one of those guys. I mean, big time. This dude was a energy, intensity magnet. You could hear him from a mile away. He brought it every single day. So you losing that, to go to Jacksonville, and make no mistake, Jacksonville's defense was really, really good with Campanelli there. Yeah, you need some guys like that. You really, really do. So we'll see how Matt kind of puts together the staff this upcoming offseason. Down South Packer, thank you for the super chat. Thank you to the 700 of you who are here, by the way. Is that Bill Hand? If Matt does lose coaches on the offensive side that Hafley wants, who do you want to join the offensive side of the ball to mind meld with Matt? I guess the first thing that you would need to see is if Steno goes. And if Jeff Hafley wants Steno to be his offensive coordinator calling the plays, I think Matt would let him go, because Matt had that opportunity when he was with the Rams to go to Tennessee to go call plays in Tennessee. And that was really the precursor to him becoming a head coach. So I don't think he would stand in Adam Stenovich's way to go call plays in Miami if Hafley wanted to bring him with him. I don't know that that's what Hafley's going to want, but if he does, then he probably goes. I could be wrong. I could be 1,000,000,000% wrong, but I think outside of that exact scenario happening where Hafley or somebody else hires Steno as a play calling offensive coordinator, I do not think Steno is going to go anywhere. Could be wrong, but I don't think he's going to go anywhere. And to me, I think everyone else is probably staying on staff on the offensive side, except Butkus. I think Butkus is probably the one that's on the hottest seat. And it's like, maybe Callahan could be a good offensive line coach. He did struggle in Tennessee, but I'd have to look at open, offensive line coaches to take a look at that a little bit closer, if I'm being honest, Bill. All I care about is please don't rehire Joe Barry. I tweeted that out in jest today. He is a free agent now because Miami's coaching staff is nuked. But I did joke too. And I didn't even joke. Joe Barry is really bad defensive coordinator. He will never get a defensive coordinator job in the NFL again, would be my guess. He is a very good linebackers coach. So it's not going to happen. They're not going to bring him back. I'm sure Joe Barry has no interest in coming back to Green Bay. But I will say, if you could get him as a linebackers coach, it'd probably be actually a phenomenal hire. But I hear what you're saying, Hyper. Beast, thanks again. To be honest, I think the whole Rodgers-LaFleur beef was overblown. I don't think that was really anything, especially because he defended him like that. First of all, Aaron does have sometimes where he grows fonder of you the further that time has gone on. I do think there were things where Matt and Aaron did not see eye to eye. I think that is a very true thing. I don't even think it was portrayed as the media as something that was broken, beyond repair or anything like that. I just think it was probably time for both sides, meaning the organization and Aaron, to go in different directions at that time. But I don't think anything was ever too beyond, broken with Matt and Aaron. But I do always think there was just a little bit of push pull and just a little tug of war at times, some power games and things like that. Travel Seeker, I think we need some changes or additions with what we know now. What are those changes or additions? I do think keeping Matt LaFleur was the right decision. Yeah, we talked about a lot of those. I think special teams coordinator, you're going to have to get a new defensive coordinator, maybe make some changes on that defensive staff a little bit, depending on what the new defensive coordinator wants in those roles. And then I think maybe offensive line coach would be those changes that you're probably looking for, Travel Seeker. Chad, thanks for being here. Do you think changes will happen, and what changes? Okay, we know defensive coordinator is going to change. We know that one. All right, at least we're 99% at this point. I think I have no idea what he's going to do at special teams coordinator. I would not be stunned if there was a Rich Bisaccia retirement, or if there was a mutual parting of ways, or even if Rich just moved to strictly assistant head coach and not maybe special teams coordinator. I think that it feels like there needs to be something there, but I honestly don't know. And I think they like Rich in the organization still. And so I honestly don't know what's going to happen there. If I were betting today, I might lean towards that they keep Rich Bisaccia as special teams coordinator. And I know a lot of you are not going to like that. I don't think I like that, but I think there's a chance that he stays. I don't think there's any chance he just gets fired outright. If anything, it's going to be like a retirement or mutual parting. But that's a really interesting, in my opinion, like a coin flip. Again, new defensive coordinator. I think Steno stays, and I do think Butkus gets relieved of his duties. And it wouldn't surprise me if there was like either linebackers coach, receivers coach, if there was like a one-off here or there where maybe Matt just wanted to make a change, randomly to one of those spots, maybe not so randomly. But yeah, and you could also have to replace DeMarcus Covington as well as defensive line coach. Either way, I think you're going to see about 3 or 4 changes on this staff, but which ones they are and how impactful they are and things like that, I think that probably remains to be seen. Xavier, thank you again. In my opinion, make Flores the assistant head coach and highest paid defensive coordinator ever. Give him full control of the defensive personnel, and let's bring the Lombardi home. Open up the vault of Sledding Hill savings. You theoretically could do that. I mean, again, first of all, if he gets a head coaching job, that changes things, right? That would certainly change some things. I'm just seeing if there's any other news on anything. I don't think there has been. Look, we're pretty status quo and everything. All right. But yeah, you theoretically could do that. But again, if he gets a head coaching opportunity, he'd be not on the market. And then as far as defensive coordinator, it probably does come down to the highest bidder, would be my guess. And if Green Bay's the highest bidder, great. Would he leave Minnesota to go to Green Bay? I don't know. My feeling on it is don't get your hopes up. And that's maybe just the way that I'm thinking about it, but I'm not getting my hopes up that Brian Flores is going to be defensive coordinator. But theoretically, Xavier, yes, you could make him the highest paid coordinator in the league. You could pay him as a head coach. You could give him you could basically say, hey, you're head coach of the defense. We're going to pay you the exact, or just like tick less than what Matt's getting. You could do anything, and you could make him assistant head coach as well. You could do anything you wanted, but my guess is it's not going to be Brian Flores, but man, I would love it if it was, for double reasons, right? Not only do you get him in Green Bay, but you take him out of Minnesota. Big drive here for Buffalo, by the way, up by 1, driving for a touchdown. Buffalo has the opportunity to put this away. Just have to avoid that turnover. And Denver's got to find a way to hold him to a field goal here. Why keep blocking wide receivers, but not blocking tight ends? Yeah, it's a random question, WIS Pioneer or WHS Pioneer. But I think Matt wants blockers at all of those positions, would be honest. I think he does care about wide receivers blocking on the outside, but he has Jaden Reed, Matthew Golden that are not the best blockers in the world. Dobbs is not the best blocker in the world. So he made some concessions there. And I think he really does want blocking tight ends, but that kind of main blocking tight end position, he wanted so much, he put an offensive lineman there. But I think he would prefer to have another guy. And Kraft got good at blocking too. So I just think they decided, so if you're thinking of like a Mercedes Lewis, WHS Pioneer, Mercedes gives you nothing to receiver. So he's basically an offensive lineman. And, it just comes down to roster flexibility and roster construction. Do you want to, put a tight end on your roster who's just a blocker and not a pass catcher? just for the sake of saying he's a tight end? Or do you just want to take one of your offensive linemen and have him do the same thing and have him have a little bit better bulk in size? And then you don't have to roster that tight end that can't catch anything. So to me, that's probably the direction more that they went with because of that. Big third down coming up. All right. I just about given up on Matt, but if we lose Hafley and part with Rich, look for a new offensive coordinator. It'll be nice to have some carryover, break the bank, get the band back together. Matt LaFleur, Saleh, and McDaniels. Saleh's not going anywhere, guys. Saleh is the defensive coordinator in San Fran, and he calls the plays, and he's with his guy Shanahan. The only way Saleh is going somewhere is if he gets a head coaching job. So yeah, he's not. And by the way, even if he wanted to go to Green Bay, San Francisco's not letting him go to Green Bay. They would have, like, he'd have to ask permission to go interview with Green Bay, and there's no way San Francisco's saying yes for a lateral move. So Saleh's not coming over. McDaniel could, but McDaniel's not taking an offensive coordinator job. Is that a catch? Is that a catch? Did it hit the ground or is it a catch? That's a huge play. But McDaniel's not taking an offensive coordinator job without play calling, and I doubt Matt's giving up play calling, nor do I think he should give up play calling. It was a drop, by the way. So yeah, I don't think either of those are probably likely. But hey, if McDaniel and LaFleur just want to, get back together, and Matt wants that to happen, sure, you could find a way to make it happen, I'm sure. But McDaniel might get a head coaching job too. That's the other thing. But yeah, I don't think that's going to be your trio, frankly. Shielhaas and Morris as offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. Again, my guess is Steno staying, and I do think Raheem Morris is going to be the defensive coordinator if I were a betting man today. That would be my overarching guess, is Raheem Morris is defensive coordinator for the Packers and Steno stays as offensive coordinator on the offensive side of the ball. Just my guess right now. Juan, thank you for the chat. We need fresh voices on offense and new players on defense. I'm hoping for Campanelli at defensive coordinator. Still unsure about offensive coordinator. What do you think? Yeah, Campanelli's in a defensive coordinator role already. So again, Jacksonville's not going to let him go be a defensive coordinator or interview for a defensive coordinator job when he's already in that spot. Jacksonville head coach is an offensive coach. So yeah, that's a lateral move. Jacksonville's not going to let him out of that. So Campanelli's not going to come over here. Again, I think Steno's going to stay. The five names I would keep an extra eye on for defensive coordinator. And I'm not saying these are my names. All right. Just be clear. One of them is actually Raheem Morris, who I would actually like, but that to me is just a very logical fit with his history with Matt. And I think is the most likely. The two internals, Ansley or Covington. I think if it's one of them, it's probably Covington, by the way, would be my guess. So I think Ansley would be further down the list. Christian Parker's kind of my add-on to this, but remember, they did interview Christian Parker last time around, and he's done a great job in Philly, at least by all accounts, and is under the Vic Fangio, umbrella too. And just know that, like, a lot of head coaches like hiring defensive coordinators, or if you're like if you're an offensive minded head coach, they like hiring defensive coordinators from schemes and systems and teams that they struggle against. Like that's just sort of a niche thing of, like, they usually like to be the ones of, like, well, this is what gives me problems all the time. That's what I want. If it gives me problems, then it probably gives everyone else problems too. So I want that style of defense. And Fangio's defense, Vic Fangio specifically, other versions of it have not, but Vic's has given Matt some trouble. And again, I think Christian Parker is an up-and-coming coach and has coached in Green Bay as well. So that's another one. The other one is Zach Orr. And again, this is not my choice. I'll be clear on this again. The rumor that was about at the time was that Green Bay had offered one of the Ravens defensive coaches the defensive coordinator job ahead of Jeff Hafley. Now, there were three. It was Anthony Weaver, it was Zach Orr, and it was, why can't I think of the other dude's name at the moment? It doesn't matter. Either way, there were three. And the buzz was that it was Zach Orr that Green Bay wanted to make their defensive coordinator, but Zach Orr turned them down and took the Ravens defensive coordinator position. Denard Wilson, I think, was the other one. But that Zach Orr stayed with Baltimore and turned down Green Bay. I don't know that for a fact. That's just what I've heard / has been rumored. And so I could see if Zach Orr was offered it last time and is now a open defensive coordinator, if Matt wanted him again, well, he's out there, right? But he had a rough year in Baltimore, to say the least, and that could disqualify him. The other one's Jim Leonard, who was offered the defensive coordinator job ahead of Joe Barry, and Leonard said no at the time, but Matt did offer him that position too. So there are allegedly, apparently, maybe two guys out there that Matt's offered the defensive coordinator job to before, and Jim Leonard and Zach Orr, that could make some logical sense. But I think Raheem Morris as defensive coordinator, and again, squirt gun to my head right now, I would say Steno stays as offensive coordinator. I think the real interesting one is of course, the Fighting Rich Bisaccias. Fred, thanks for being a member for 9 months. Why expect different results doing the same thing? I just don't think it's quite that simple. And I think there's a lot of really good stuff that Matt has done as well. And yes, there are things that need to get cleaned up, but I don't think anything that I've seen from Matt and this team in general over 7 seasons and 6 playoff appearances would say unequivocally, yep, that guy can't win the big one. Do I think there's things that this team absolutely has to do better? Yes, I very much do. But I don't think that, Matt's disqualified from being able to compete for championships on anything that he does as a head coach. I really don't. I would also say, I think even on the most egregious of, or hate driven lists, Matt's probably a top 12 coach in the league. Even on if you're really, don't like Matt and putting him low on the list, he's probably a top 12. It's hard to find a good coach. And I think the argument that a lot of people make is hey, Matt's not a great coach and I want a great coach. Okay. I think Matt's been good, and I think some would label him as great. And it's hard just to find good to borderline great coaches. And I think, again, not everything is going to be perfect. We all look at this and we all want the best coach, right? And then we want the best OC, we want the best DC, we want the best, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, offensive line, etc. We can go on the defense, special teams, etc. It doesn't work that way. There are 32 teams that are competing for the services of the best of everything. And you only have so many resources to go after everything in totality. And you're not going to be perfect at everything. And to me, Matt's a good head coach. Again, I laid out the reasons why I think it would be fair if you wanted to move on. But I think Matt's a really good head coach, and I think he's going to have the opportunity to still compete at the highest of levels. And I think if you get one of those runs where some things bounce your way, which certainly did not happen this year or last year, and it's not just bouncing away, it's some of the stuff that obviously Matt did as well. But I still very much believe that he can be a Super Bowl winning head coach. So we'll see. Time will tell. And he's going to have to go out and prove it as he gets a very large extension today, by all accounts, by all, the Schefters and the Rappaports, etc. Can't stop laughing about the Rich thought, the Rich Bisaccia staying, or which one? I don't know. Sorry, Ralph. I might have said something earlier and I don't even remember it anymore. Mike Wall for offensive line coach. Love Mike. Yeah, that'd be awesome. I don't ever see it happening, but man, I would be overjoyed if that happened. I told Mike he still has to come on, even if he's the offensive line coach, and talk football with me once a week. What would be the reason for keeping Rich Bisaccia? I think sometimes, and I should probably define this maybe a little bit better at times, is just like I was talking about with the Zach Orr, for example. Just because sometimes I tell you what I think is going to happen doesn't mean that that's what I'm rooting for, have a rooting interest in. I would do something different at special teams coordinator. It just hasn't been good enough. Travel seeker, I cannot give you a good argument for keeping Rich Bisaccia. Ian Rappaport says Packers GM Brian Gutekunst is also working on an extension. The Green Bay Brain Trust is expected back. All right. So yeah, Schefter had that earlier, or at least Domovsky did. Yeah. So no news there, but I can't make a good one. If I was playing devil's advocate and saying why I think they keep him, I think they love him in the locker room. I think Matt has a ton of respect for him. I think this year, if you look at it, the coverage units were good. They had the big Duvernay return when both of their gunners were out, but their coverage units were good this year. Rich was not given a returner. It is very difficult to blame Rich for kick return and punt return when you literally don't give him a qualified kick returner or punt returner. Unless it was Rich's decision to not play Keyshawn Nixon, which I don't think it was, it's tough to sort of blame him in totality for that. Punting was amazing. Daniel Whalen was fantastic this year. And it's difficult to blame Rich Bisaccia for just a kicker going out and missing kicks that are very makeable kicks. You don't have much control over that. You can work on it. You can rep it. You can go over the technique of it. But at the end of the day, Brandon McManus has to go out and make the kicks. So I would say the things that Rich kind of had control over, they kind of did well this year. And the things he didn't have control over, of like not having a legitimate returner and having a kicker that couldn't make kicks, kind of not totally his fault. All right. That's my devil's advocate version of it. I don't know if you buy that. I don't know if I buy it, but that would be my devil's advocate version. For me, at the end of the day, if you made me special teams coordinator, which would be a nightmare, by the way, and I'd be 1,000,000,000% worse than Rich Bisaccia, but if you made me special teams coordinator and you gave me the 11 worst NFL players and said, go make special teams, I would say it's all right. We've got to find a way to make this work. We've got to, like, we're going to Apollo 13 this, and like, what do we have that's working here? How can we piecemeal this together to make some sort of working special teams? And the onus is on me to not be the 30th or worst special teams. We got to get to even. We just have to be like the 16th. And Rich Bisaccia, despite not having the 11 worst football players, has not been able to put together a consistent, relevant, decent, average special teams in his entire time in Green Bay. So that would be my argument. I would say do something different, but I think the Packers might end up keeping him, but I don't know. I think it's an interesting coin flip from just my read on it, if nothing else. Again, that's not what I would do. Andy, I think Flores has been blackballed from head coaching gigs due to ongoing lawsuit. If given pick of defensive coordinator jobs, why wouldn't he want to coach Micah, assuming the money is equal? What's the better option? Yeah, it's a fair question. I don't know. I don't know what his preference would be. I do know it takes some time to pick up his defense. It's not an overnight thing. He's got a lot of players in Minnesota that know it very well, but he also might feel like, hey, we don't have a quarterback and we're never going to make it anywhere. We're the third or the fourth best team in the division in Minnesota. You know, it's a dead end position, right? Washington's probably not a great spot. I'm sure every defensive coordinator team would love to have him on. I don't know where his relationship is with Matt. I don't know if he would, sort of quote unquote screw over Minnesota by going to Green Bay. There's just a lot of unanswered questions there. I guess at the end of the day, just my overarching guess is, and maybe it's just me trying not to get my hopes up of, I don't think he ends up in Green Bay, but hell yeah, if he could, I would gladly take that as my number one option. I've heard you say you think Morris will be the DC, but you haven't gave your opinion on him. Do you like that hire if it happens? True full transparency, Beast. I need to go and research Raheem a little bit better. I need to see where his defense is ranked. I need to see, how he did in Atlanta with his defenses these past few years and some of the stuff he's done in the past. In general, my personal, I don't want to say this without researching it. Like, my personal belief is that he's a really good defensive coordinator. That's my gut feel on it. Now, again, I don't want to go over that and say like today, man, Raheem Morris would be such an amazing hire. And then I research it in the next couple of days as I put together. Monday is probably when you're going to get my defensive coordinator candidates, or we'll probably take a deeper dive into that. But as far as, whether, and I'd be good, I don't want to say something I'll regret later. And then like research should be like, oh, actually, no, he sucks. So my gut says, yeah, I think he'd be a really good choice. But I want to touchdown Broncos. 55 seconds left. Oh, did he catch it? He landed bad. They can't lose any more wide receivers. That'd be their third wide receiver they lost in this game. It is a touchdown, though. Marvin Mims is down hurt. 55 seconds left. They're up by 2, so I'm assuming they're going to kick the extra point here. But awesome ending to this one. Josh Allen now, legacy drive. He's got 55 seconds and 3 timeouts is in eternity. Yeah, it's the ball. I think that's a catch. What the hell is a catch anymore? But I think that's a catch. But yeah, I'll get back to you, Beast. Not to punt on your question, but I want to research it a little bit more. Ben, Dan, and Kevin are happy tonight. Oh, I actually think that's probably unequivocally false, Packers superfan. I think they probably would have preferred Green Bay going in a different direction and bringing some chaos to the division rather than Matt sticking, if I would have to guess. And I think O'Connell and LaFleur have a lot of mutual respect. So yeah, I don't know. My guess is actually that's unequivocally wrong. Doc Jake 1, can Matt let Steno manage challenges, end of half situations, non-emergent timeouts? Something that Matt clearly has to be better at. No question. I just think Matt early in his career seemed to trust the analytics a lot more, and he was a lot better when he did. And so personally, I just think he has to trust his analytics guy, Connor Lewis, a little bit more. All right. So was confirmed a touchdown. Hey, a kicker that can make an extra point. Congratulations, Broncos. That's sweet. Up by 3, 55 seconds left. This is going to be an epic ending. I'll be here with you guys to break it down as we're going through it too. But yeah, Matt just needs to be better at it. And I think sticking to the analytics would be a great way to do that. Now the Packers need to worry about bringing back our best wide receiver, Dobbs. You may not agree, but Dobbs in the last 4 years has outperformed every wide receiver on the team, regular season and playoffs. Yep. Well, Hailers, I'm sorry, but he's gone. I know you keep banging that drum. You can keep banging it. There's a reason that Romeo and the other receivers have posted basically like goodbye, messages and like, oh, the team hanging out together. And he's gone, my friend. He's gone. Green Bay tells you what they're going to do before they do it. And when you re-sign Christian Watson, you draft receivers in the 1st and 3rd rounds and still have Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks under roster on cheap contracts. He gone, my friend. Again, I would say under 5% chance he's back, somewhere around a 3% chance. Could they pay him? Yes. Do I think they need the money elsewhere? Also, yes. And I would be very surprised. I'd be very surprised if at the end of the day, Romeo ended up being back. When's Waylon's extension? He got his extension, right? They extended all 3 specialists this last year. I think I'm right on that. Waylon got the contract extension through 2027. He'll be a free agent. So he's got 2 years left, $2.1 million this year, $3.3 million the following year. And so, yes, he's under contract through 2027, 2 years left on that deal. And I have a feeling he's going to get another one after that. Bills will start at their own 27.5-ish yard line, 50 seconds left, 1st and 10, down by 3. Josh Allen with a potential, I don't know if you can have a legacy moment in the divisional round, but has an opportunity to be a big-time Josh Allen moment here. We'll see. I feel good about the extensions. 26 teams should be good. Any thoughts on Christian Parker as potential defensive coordinator if you haven't discussed it? Yeah, I talked about him. I just think the fact that he's been in Green Bay in the past, the fact that he's been under Vic Fangio, he's had multiple scheme experiences, and that, again, they interviewed him last time around. I think he's a good, young, up-and-coming coach. There is an argument to be made of, hey, do you want a first-time defensive coordinator coming in? And that would certainly be an argument against Christian Parker and why maybe somebody like Raheem Morris would make some sense. That is a completion. You're going to have to get a timeout. That's about a 10-second play for 9 yards and having to waste a timeout. It's a bad first play by Buffalo. That's a good first play for Denver. But yeah, in general, I like the idea, but when you have like, this team is going to try to compete for a Super Bowl this year. And I do wonder if, going in that direction and going with a young defensive coordinator that's never called plays or put together a defense before is the way that you want to go. There's always the tricky situation. Do you want the next up, big up and coming guy and try to take a swing on that? Or do you want to take somebody who has the experience and who has run legitimate NFL defenses successfully in the past? Extend Waylon through 2030. I wouldn't say no at the moment. I wouldn't say no. What did Keith say? Now I want to know Keith. Oh, he's saying like derogatory terms. Yeah, just get Keith out of here. Keith is banned. I don't even know what he said, but I immediately saw a derogatory term. Keith got out of here real quick. Thanks for the super chat, Romeo's dad. Romeo played great in these last couple of games. I mean, he was really fantastic, and especially in that Bears game. I mean, the second highest graded player in the game. Just for the record, though, in case anyone's interested, including Whalers, who I really like, and Whalers like, oh, he got a knee down, right? Knee down. That's a hell of a throw. Brandon Cooks, my goodness. Oh, they're saying incomplete now. This is gonna be an interesting one. What a throw. 2 hands. Foot. I think the hand's out of bounds. I think that's incomplete. Here's the better look at it. Left foot. Hand out of bounds. That's no catch. No catch for Brandon Cooks. That was a hell of a throw, though, by Josh Allen. And a great catch, just not a catch, unfortunately. Yeah, that sucks. Sucks for the Bills. Good for Denver. Just in case you're wondering, my grades for receivers this year. My highest was Christian Watson, 3.8. My second was Matthew Golden, 3.45. My third was Wicks at 2.5, and my fourth was Dobbs, 2.35. So despite playing in a lot more snaps, getting double snaps of pretty much anybody, Dobbs was still only my 4th highest graded wide receiver on the team this year. And then Reed after that with plus 1.5. So again, I think the The writing is just on the wall there for Sir Romeo. Autocorrect is making you look drunk. That's all right. That's totally fine. Be nice if Campanelli didn't get hired and we could promote him now. Yeah, that would have been awesome. Actually, they probably two things last year happened. Campanelli getting hired as defensive coordinator. And if Hafley would have got hired last year as a head coach in last year's round, you have Robert Saleh as your defensive coordinator too. So yeah, just some unfortunate circumstances there. Oh, I thought he did it again. I'm like, my goodness. All right, 2nd and 10 for Buffalo. Don't care about the stats, just watching every game this season. Dobbs has been a safety blanket, security blanket, safety valve. What's good, Andy? Now that head coach is settled staff-wise, who is back and who isn't? Yeah, Justice Moscato. We went over that a couple times already in this one. So if you're just getting into the chat, go back and listen. We went over that a couple different times. So woke up from a nap and saw you live. Quick recap, my dude. Oh, we got a little hook and lateral. Okay, we got a hook and lateral. He's getting down way into Broncos territory. We're getting some OT. We're getting some OT here, I think. Can the Bills kicker make a field goal? Second time out used in field goal range already. Love the little hook and lateral. Is that Ray Davis? Yeah, that's Ray Davis. He's a good young back. It's a good play by Buffalo. This is going to get fun. This is going to get very fun. Very nice play call. Very nice play call. But yeah, Matt is extended. They're working on extensions for Goody, and they're working on extensions for Russ Ball as well. And this is not a short-term extension. It's a long-term extension for Matt LaFleur, so not a prove-it type extension. Yeah, I just think it's going to be a huge chunk of Watson, Golden, Reed, and Wicks next year with a little bit of Savion Williams smattered in. That's kind of all you need. Plus you have Tucker Kraft. You've got probably Josh Jacobs, hopefully a Marshawn Lloyd healthy. You've got a lot of mouths still to feed in that offense, and you're golden, no pun intended, still with what group you have. There's no way that's in bounds, right? Okay. Shot play to Cooks, incomplete. I don't think they'll probably trade for Ray Davis. No, I don't see that happening. Did they call DPI on that play? On that further, I was wondering why it was 1st and 10. Sorry, I'm kind of focused on the chat, so I haven't been able to keep an eye, but I was wondering why it was 1st and 10. The issue is that it seems that Jordan trusts Rome the most. He goes to him a lot. Yeah, I think that that's not the worst thing, that he's going to start looking some other ways, and especially in Matthew Golden's direction. And Matthew Golden's had some key fourth. I mean, he went to him on 4th down in this last game in the must-have moment. Did it in Dallas as well. So yeah, I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing, that he's got to start looking Watson and Golden's way, maybe a little bit more, Tucker Kraft's way a little bit more with Romeo gone. I think he's probably, I'd have to look at tight end extensions, Caden, but I think he's probably in the top 3 paid tight ends when all is said and done, when he gets his extension, would be my guess. You know, I don't think it's haters, Leaf. What I would say is that I think everyone's passionate about this topic. One of the first things I said coming into this is that it's going to be a polarizing decision one way or the other. And everyone wants the Packers to be, that's in here, I'm assuming, wants the Packers to be, oh, that's a big miss by Josh Allen. That is a big miss by Josh Allen. I think Bill's got away with a hold on that play too. All comes down to this field goal. We get overtime, or do we get, Knox is open, dude. Allen, you got to hit that, buddy. You got to hit that. That might be a touchdown. That might be a touchdown. I don't think it's going to be, but it would have been close. All right, all comes down to this. But everyone's passionate about it, and everyone has their feelings on how this will work best. And, you know, when you've had 7 years of Matt and you've had a ceiling on what you've been able to accomplish, I can understand why somebody might say, hey, I think it might just be time to try something new. It's not necessarily that Matt's bad, but it might be time to try something different. And I can understand it. I don't even necessarily disagree with the logic. I I think other people will say like, hey, look at Matt's a playoff team basically every single year, a playoff coach every year. They've won a lot of games. He has the 69th most wins in NFL history. And of those top 70 coaches, he's in the top 10 in winning percentage. Like there's a lot to really like about this guy. And I think, so I don't think anyone's trying to hate. I think everyone's very passionate about how to make this team the best possible. That's what makes Packers fandom fun, is we all have different ways of getting to that ultimate that ultimate end of trying to win a Super Bowl. We all have different takes on it. And again, that's what makes this all entertaining. Meanwhile, Buffalo, 50-yard field goal. We've got the snap, the hold. It's down. Laces out. Right smack dab down the middle. It is good. 5 seconds left. And assuming the Broncos don't do something crazy with 5 seconds left, we've got overtime. I think Tasteful Bonsai, it's a great name. The question here is, when are we likely to hire a defensive coordinator? I do think that they will take their time and make sure that they get this right. And I think you can probably start seeing some defensive coordinators. If I had to guess what they should probably do now, because right now Jeff Hafley's still the defensive coordinator. But my guess, Matt's going to be in touch with Jeff and say like, hey, do you mind if we start, vetting this? But you can immediately start interviewing Derek Ansley and DeMarcus Covington, right? So I would have those two guys in on Monday, assuming that they're not elsewhere, especially Covington taking another interview. I would have those guys in on Monday, and I'm going to interview those two. And then as soon as we get word, I'm going to start getting feelers out for Brian Flores and Raheem Morris, and I'm going to start having conversations there and say, hey, if Jeff does take the job, we want you to be here as soon as possible to interview, and start putting your list of candidates together, which good news for Matt. I have great news for Matt. I mean, one is that you probably just got like $80 million, which is a really good news. B, I'll do it for you. I got you covered, Matt. I'm going to put together a full defensive coordinator list of coordinators to interview for you on Monday's episode. So you don't even have to do it. Don't even have to do it. 31 teams have UDFA kickers that bang 70-yarders. To be fair, Matt Prater is definitely not he probably was initially a UDFA, but yeah, he's an experienced kicker for sure. Jay Ray, I think people take for granted how hard it is to win in the NFL. Yes, Matt is 7-year head coach, but he has not also overseen a rebuild, something many head coaches don't survive. Being the youngest team in the NFL is not easy. I think that's well said, Jay Ray. I think that's well said. All right, friends, I do have to get out of here. I do have some dinner plans tonight with the kiddos. We're going to go watch some football and eat some wings. So that's the plan. Hope you guys enjoy overtime. I'll be back tomorrow breaking the Matt LaFleur situation on tomorrow's show. So you're gonna have to wait a little bit longer for the end of season grades episode, because obviously things have changed. So we'll talk some Matt tomorrow. We'll talk some defensive coordinators too, but specifically on Monday, we'll go over the defensive coordinators in great detail. Thank you for probably 1,000 different people have probably been in here at some point in time that have, joined us on short notice to talk some Packers and Matt LaFleur. I know that there's going to be people that are upset. I know there's going to be people that are happy. Packers made their decision, and now hopefully Matt LaFleur and the Packers can go out and prove that it was the right decision, and that Matt goes on to have a illustrious remainder of his career in the NFL with hopefully multiple Super Bowl wins. I'll see you guys soon. Enjoy the rest of your night. Enjoy the rest of the playoffs. Well, at least this weekend. We'll talk tomorrow morning, but until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.